Welcome to Film and Page. I'm Dominic. So they're doing a Babylon 5 reboot. So this news is kind of old now, so I'm a little bit late getting on it, but still I really wanted to talk about this because Babylon 5 is one of my favorite science fiction shows. And since the news came out, there's been a lot of mixed reactions about it. And in this age of like reboots and rehashes and all this kind of thing, and soft reboots and everything else, a lot of it usually turns out not to be nearly as good as the original. And a lot of fans are very skeptical of this now. And so a lot of fans are skeptical of this news. And they feel cautious about this news. And I have to count myself among those fans. Now, the thing that does give me hope is J. Michael Straczynski is going to be a part of the show. He's going to be involved in it, I think, probably to the same degree he was in the original. So my background with the show is Babylon 5. I didn't fall in love with it right away, but it was easily one of my favorite science fiction shows that was on television during the 90s. Now, during the 90s, science fiction was dominated by Star Trek. You had Next Generation, that started in the late 80s and ended in around like mid-90s, and then you had an overlap. You had Deep Space Nine going at the same time, and then you had Voyager going after that. So you had a lot of Star Trek, and plus you had the TNG movies. So there's a lot of Star Trek on the go in the 90s. So Babylon 5 was like this unknown property that kind of had to carve out its own mark in a marketplace that was dominated by a very proven brand that was Star Trek. And a lot of people compared it to Star Trek because, it still involves like space and spaceships and all that kind of thing. And on top of that, it was very similar to Deep Space Nine. So there's even been some accusations that, Paramount had gotten a look at, the Bible for Babylon 5 when Straczynski pitched it to Paramount in the 80s. And then Paramount rejected it. But then when they got a look at it, they actually recycled a lot of those ideas and put them into Deep Space Nine. But that's always been a thing. I don't know if that's true or not. But anyway, that's besides the point. The two were still going to be compared anyway. But I have to say that when it comes, this show, I liked it better than some of the Star Trek shows. So I didn't like it more than the original series or Star Trek The Next Generation, but I did like Babylon 5 more than Deep Space Nine and more than Star Trek Voyager and a lot more than Enterprise. But it did a good job of carving out its own mark in this landscape that was dominated by Star Trek. And it did develop a strong fan base because of it. So now they're going to reboot it. And I have a few ideas, or I'm speculating on why they would choose to go the route of a reboot and not like a continuation to the original series or some kind of reunion movie or something like that. So first of all, I don't think the whole concept of Babylon 5 doesn't lend itself to just keep going on like with spin-off series, because it's different from Star Trek, where Star Trek very easily lends itself to that. Because Star Trek is all about the progression of humanity into something better and the exploration of space. So, you can always follow different ships that are exploring the galaxy and coming across new races and situations and all that. So that's what it's about. So it lends itself very well to spin-offs. So you had the original series, and then you got Next Generation, the further, future crew of a future Enterprise starship, and then Deep Space Nine and Voyager and all that, and then all the new shows. It's very easy to do that with Star Trek. But Babylon 5 was like a finite series. It was set up to be like a story that was told in 5 seasons, and it was described as a novel for television. And JMS, wrote a lot of a large bulk of the episodes himself. So it didn't really lend itself to go outside that. And on top of that, Babylon 5 was the last of the Babylon stations. It wasn't a line of stations. So you couldn't do a spin-off of Babylon 6 and 7 and 8. It just wouldn't work. They did try a spin-off series, The Crusade, but that didn't last no time. And even though I was a big Babylon 5 fan, I could not get into Crusade. I tried and just couldn't do it. And then they did some made-for-TV movies after the series had ended, like while the series is on and then after the series has ended. There's a couple of them I haven't seen. I just have never seen them anywhere on DVD or never ever caught them on TV. But the most of them I have seen, and some are really good and some are really bad. But there's no like story. Once the 5 years is complete, like there was no more story left to tell. And Babylon 5 wasn't about like the progression of humanity and exploration of space. It was about a very flawed humanity that was in the future, but still very like us, like we are today. And them trying to find their way in this universe that was a very dangerous place. And trying to like put together some kind of a peace between all these different warring races that they had to try to coexist. And that was the whole point of the Babylon station. So that's one of the reasons I think they're going to go reboot instead of any kind of sequel series. On top of that, you can't really do any kind of a continuation series or reunion movie or anything like that now, because a large chunk of the cast has passed away. The most recent one was Myra Furlan, the lady who played Delenn. She passed away, but so a lot of these actors can't come back. So I think that's another reason they're just going to go with the reboot. And my third reason for thinking they might go with a reboot is because when Babylon 5 was on the air, they actually almost got canceled. They thought that season 4 was going to be their last season. So they actually had to shuffle around the storyline. So they actually had to write season 4 as if it was the last season and wrap up all the major story arcs. Well, they got renewed for the 5th season, which when you watch season 5, now this is just my personal opinion, when I watch season 5, that is by far the weakest season of them all, because a lot of the episodes feel like filler. There's not really a point to season 5 because all the major conflicts and everything else is all wrapped up in the prior season. So you got this extra season tacked on that doesn't really go anywhere. So that's why it's because they had already told their story. So if they do the reboot, now the creator gets a chance to let the story play out as it was meant to over 5 seasons. So that may be another reason. So that's some of the reasons why I think they're going with a reboot. So now, since they are doing a reboot, I am kind of skeptical of it, but I do want to give it a chance. But if they're doing this, here's some of the things I want to see them do and not do in the new series. So one thing I'd like to see them do is make Jeffrey Sinclair the central character in the reboot, where he was supposed to be the central character in the original Babylon 5, but the actor had a lot of health problems, and he suffered from schizophrenia and all that, and it had gotten so bad he couldn't do the show anymore. So that's why, and no one knew this for years and years. It was only like a few years recently that why he left the show actually came out, after the actor had passed away. So he actually left the show because of health reasons. He couldn't continue on. So then they brought in another actor, Bruce Boxleitner, and he took over, but he came in as a new character, Captain John Sheridan. And so he was the captain of the space station going forward. Now, I have to admit, when I was watching Babylon 5, the first season, I had a really tough time to get on board with the show during the first season. I wasn't really that into it. I was kind of catching episodes here and there. But once Bruce Boxleitner came on the show in season 2, and the character of John Sheridan was introduced, that's when I really got into the series, was season 2. Because, and I still think to this day, I think he's just a better, more interesting character, a more interesting actor playing a more interesting character on the show. And so I really got into it. But now, with that being said, I'd like to see in the reboot Jeffrey Sinclair be the central character, because he was supposed to be the central character of the original Babylon 5 series, and not John Sheridan. So that would be something interesting to see them do that, if they're gonna, since they're rebooting it. Now, one thing I don't want them to do is go crazy and redesign the crap out of everything for the new show. So the look, I would like them to keep them as close as possible to the original look design of the Babylon 5 station, because it has such an awesome, iconic look to it, and it's one of my favorite space stations in science fiction, the Babylon station. I mean, now they can make it look so much more better with modern CGI than what they could back in the 90s. And it's why fix something that ain't broke? And a good comparison is how, like, the design direction they should go in. I'm going to compare it to the reimagined Battlestar Galactica. So when the reimagined Battlestar Galactica came out, they redesigned the Viper Mark II to look like the original Viper from the original Battlestar Galactica, but they were still so close. But they just took that design and tweaked it. But they still stayed very, very close to the original, so it looks a lot like the original Viper. So, and actually, the Viper Mark II from the reimagined Battlestar Galactica, I think, is one of my favorite starfighters. So I think that's how they should redesign Babylon 5. Go that same route that they did with the reimagined Battlestar Galactica. Especially when it comes to the Star Furies, because the Star Furies are just an awesome looking space fighter, and they should stay really close to that design. Instead of, if they go and redesign everything so there's no visual link and it's going to feel too far removed or something, and I don't think it'll work. Like what they did with Star Trek Discovery. Star Trek Discovery was supposed to be a prequel to the original series, but when it aired, everything looks so different. It feels completely disconnected to the universe it's supposed to be a part of. And it's one of the reasons I really had a hard job to get on board with the show, and I just couldn't stick with it. And even though it's supposed to be in the Prime universe, it doesn't feel like it. When I watch the show, it just feels like an alternate Star Trek. And I know they didn't call it a reboot, but they wanted to do like a visual reboot. Then if they were going to go to do that, they might as well just had it in an alternate universe to begin with and just had it a complete reboot, in my opinion. So I don't want them to go that route with Babylon 5, where everything looks so different it doesn't even feel like like it has none of the spirit of the original show. The other thing I don't want them to do in the reboot, and it's because they do this so much in movies and TV shows now, where they destroy all the mysteries around everything. Like, everything gets overly explained and shown, and so there's nothing left up to your imagination at all. So one cool thing I liked about the original Babylon 5 series is they kept the Vorlons very mysterious, and they never showed the Vorlon homeworld. Now, maybe they did in one of the movies that I didn't see that was made for television, but as far as I know, they never showed the Vorlon homeworld. So Vorlon space and the Vorlon homeworld was kept very mysterious. And I hope they keep that with the new show, that they don't go start showing it, because what I liked, even when humans went there to the Vorlon homeworld in return, and people asked them, what's the Vorlon homeworld look like? It's almost like they couldn't explain it. So it just let your imagination go crazy thinking, well, what is it like? So when they ruin a mystery like that, it always seems like it would be cool to know the answer, but their answer is never going to be as good as what you're wondering in your mind. Good example of that is Prometheus, the prequel to the Alien series, when they completely destroyed the whole mystery around the space jockey. They should have that should have just been left a mystery. It works much better being a mystery than having it explained. So that's some of my thoughts on the Babylon 5 reboot. And be curious to see who they start casting for the characters and what kind of characters they're going to bring in. Are they going to make up new characters for the reboot, or just port over all the old characters but recast them with new actors? And for sure, there'll probably be some gender and race swaps in there for sure, as news comes out. If there isn't, I'd be very surprised, but I could almost guarantee there will be. But still, I'm looking forward to this. Don't really know what to make of it, but I will give it a chance. And but I will say this right now: no matter what, however this show plays out, the reboot, however well done it is, I'm always gonna prefer the original Babylon 5 over any reboot that they do. I just loved it too much. My feelings and nostalgia is too strong for the original, and I'm always going to prefer that. I might like the new one, but I'm always going to prefer the original. And of course, this is going to create a new split in the Babylon 5 fan base that probably wasn't there before, because for sure there's going to be new fans who are going to love the reboot, and they're not going to like the original, and so people are going to be fighting online for sure over which one's better, because that always happens. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comment section, and I will see you at the next one. I'd like to say thank you to all of my subscribers. I appreciate you all in helping this channel grow. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Also, don't forget to hit the bell icon so you'll be notified when new videos are uploaded.